Hello my friends, welcome to my channel. If this is the first time you watch my video, just so you know, this is a channel we discuss all sorts of things: philosophy, science, art, and life experiences. And every Friday, I will hold a live stream. You are always welcome, so we can discuss all sorts of things. It can be casual chat, and sometimes we will go to discuss specific topic about philosophy or science. And of course, I think the majority we discuss here is still about philosophy, but at the same time, we refuse to separate things into different fields. I think essentially what we're trying to promote here is a lifestyle, is a way of thinking that is non-duality. So we don't consider any kind of separation anymore. At the same time, please be sure that this channel is not just about entertainment. When we discuss philosophy and science, we have all the seriousness. Such as this episode, we are going to discuss those scientific theory built based on anti-substantialist thinking. Please let me explain what this is, what I'm talking about here. So earlier, I made 3 episodes, plus this episode, we all discuss one topic, which is the way of thinking. And I suggested that all different type of theories, no matter it's scientific or philosophical, can all be categorized as 2 types of way of thinking. One is substantialist or entity-based thinking. Another one is the opposite, which is desubstantialized and not entity-based thinking. And this episode, we are going to discuss those scientific theory which is built based on desubstantialist thinking. First of all, let me quickly emphasize what is substance-based thinking or entity-based thinking. This kind of thinking suggests that all the existence is built based on some fixed thing, no matter is in idealist way that is consciousness or some kind of abstract idea. But in a materialist way, this is a fixed thing, it's a solid matter or some kind of material particle. In this way of thinking, we call it substance-based thinking or entity-based thinking. And the second type of thinking is the opposite. It suggests that we should transcend this kind of thinking to understand the reality as something as a flow, as something fluid, as something with full potential. And we have a lot of great theories built based on this kind of thinking, which transcend our old mode of understanding of the reality. I know this sounds crazy because a lot of people they suggest that science is built based on substance or entity-based thinking. There is no way that science could suggest something in another way. But is that true? Let's explore together. The first one I'm going to discuss is theory of relativity, which everyone knows. Actually, I know that I discuss quantum physics a lot, but theory of relativity is the first time shake our understanding of absolute time and space. We know that in the classical Newtonian view of the world, space is like an absolute container or something, and time is like an uniformly flowing river. Both exist independently of physical objects. However, relativity theory shows that space and time are not independent backgrounds. They can be curved, altered, and are interconnected. Therefore, gravity was no longer being understood as a mysterious force between 2 objects, but as the result of the movement of time and space. So this is very much like the flowing of the river. It's very much like Tao, and therefore this is the theory of relativity. And the second one I'm going to discuss is quantum mechanics. And you can see this trend, this tendency of desubstantialization is even enhanced more in quantum mechanics. This is why I suggest that quantum mechanics is one of the most iconic representation of anti-substantialist theory in modern science. First of all sorts of particle, it doesn't really have the same form or shape as the traditional way we understand it as a substance. Not anymore. We don't consider it as a little ball anymore because we know that those particles, sometimes it look like particle, but sometimes they look like waves. So we cannot really define them as a particle or wave. It depends on the relationship. It depends on the circumstances. So therefore, this distinction between particle and wave become more and more blurred. And so the worldview that we used to understand the world as made up by little balls, little substance, get transcended. And I know that a lot of people might still consider quantum mechanics sounds crazy, but to me that's not crazy at all, because if you look behind, this is a complete shift of the worldview, complete shift of the philosophical understanding of the world. And this is very important during our history. If you're curious about quantum mechanics and how to solve those mystery in quantum mechanics like quantum entanglement, observer effect, and wave-particle duality, please have a look of the previous episodes I made. In this episode, we discussed in detail about how to understand and solve the mystery of quantum mechanics based on the understanding of relational non-duality. At the same time, the development of system theory has also been steadily eroding the concept of entities. It suggests that the totality, the whole system, you cannot understand them by the combination of isolated parts. You're not supposed to understand them like that. Because what really matters is between these seemingly isolated or different parts is about the connection. Therefore, we don't prioritize the isolated parts anymore. We prioritize the relationship. This is also the shift of understanding in system theory. This trend of thinking continues to deepen in the complex systems. Complexity science suggests that phenomenon of emergence. No matter it's consciousness, life, society, or civilizations, all of this, they are not the properties inherent to any single entity, but rather emerge gradually through a vast network of interactions. In other words, the whole gives rise to new properties that the parts do not possess, and these properties arise from relationships rather than from the entity themselves. And of course, in ecology, we all understand very well that every living being or non-living being in this planet, we are all interconnected. We rely on each other, we affect each other. So the best way to understand this planet, understand all the existence, is that it's a giant web of relationships, of interconnection, not separate, isolated entities. And this is the insight from ecology as well. And in information theory, we also have this strong tendency of decentralization. We don't understand information as a center, as an entity. It's the opposite. We understand that it's everywhere. It's manifested in all the diversity. It permeates in everything. Therefore, we don't have a certain center to manifest everything. It's already within everything. And this is the insight from information theory. And finally, I want to discuss something I consider very important. That is how we understand our brain and consciousness. I know that a lot of people, they still think it's a mystery, but actually I want to say that the real shift behind the way of thinking that already make us close to understand the reality, which is that we're trying to break through the body and mind duality, start from ancient time. And now we have the chance to break it through, because we no more consider consciousness as something just within our body. It's just a giant machine to process all the information. We're no longer really thinking that way anymore, because we know that consciousness is something manifest. It's something emerge with all sorts of relationship and connection and interactions. If you separate it or you erase all of those kind of relationship, then there will not be the result of consciousness. And this is important because we finally don't understand consciousness as something isolated or locked within your giant machine of your own body or your own brain. No more. And this is an important shift. And now you see, there are so many great, brilliant scientific theories built based on anti-substantialist thinking. It's not necessarily that science will have to build based on the understanding of substance. That is not real. Because no matter it's philosophy or science, we all been through the stage there. Not just about science, also philosophy, as the last 3 episodes we suggest that. So I think it's important to accept this fact so we can get rid of the biases. Because there's so many people that if they're into spirituality or into philosophy, they just kind of have biases towards science. And that is not really good. And also scientific people will also have biases to other field. And essentially this is why we are so cut off, because we cut off the connection, the relationship. If we don't prioritize the relationship, then we cannot see the whole picture. The whole picture is always interconnected. And this is why I make these episodes. And I would say eventually it still is the matter of ego, because if people, when they study a system, they felt like, okay, this system, I want to grab it because it lead me to the truth. But in fact, they are all boats. They are just taking you to the journey, to a certain place. Eventually, you have to transcend all these boats. But there are people, they are just so obsessed with these boats. They think, okay, this language is like, they have the copyright for the truth, for expose what is the real reality, and other boats, they are useless. And this way of thinking is so, I think essentially it's about ego, that we want to persist the truth and we don't want to appreciate the diversity and the language system to describe or to appreciate the same truth. And that creates so many problems in our society. Division and the confusion and nihilism, all sorts of things. So I think it's important that we should appreciate different language system, to appreciate, to see the same crystal through different angle. Is a long journey to erase those ego, to erase those fear and insecurity in the mind. This is kind of like the first stage to transcend it, is to let go of the the copyright thinking about only this language, only this system reveals the truth. That is just insecurity within. I believe so. Another thing I'd like to mention is that a lot of people, they think that science must be built based on solid evidence, experiments, and all these kind of things. But just think about it. When we were a child, when we just started to study physics, when you see in the book, you will draw the particles, no matter it's quark or atoms, and so what? So eventually we understand they are not really like solid particles, but it's not really completely pointless, isn't it? Because if you from the beginning, you just discuss with somebody who absolutely know nothing about science, you discuss with this person about quantum physics, do you think he will be able to understand it? I don't think so. Even in Taoism, the understanding of Tao, or in Hinduism, the understanding of Brahman, or in Buddhism, the understanding of Shunyata, all of this considered to be highest realization, let's say. So it's not something you can directly, without any effort, you can just understand it. But we don't need to understand, we already live in this reality, yes. But to get rid of the ignorance which is covered, that's a long journey. Therefore, the understanding, like when you see the drawing of a particles, it's kind of important. It's a necessary stage in our understanding. It's just that essentially we need to transcend this particle understanding, but doesn't mean it's pointless. It has its specific meaning in specific stage of time in your life and in our human history. So I think the best way is to appreciate, to understand that it has its certain function, it has certain meaning during that time. And, just to understand it and to appreciate it rather than despite it or consider it completely useless. Because it's not. We all start somewhere, isn't it? We all start somewhere. Yeah, and finally I want to say that it's really important just drop the ego and drop the biases towards different field, because all of these biases and ego are so unnecessary and it creates so many suffering for us and for other people. What kind of suffering for ourselves? First of all, we always felt like, okay, this system of language will, if I grab it, I grab the truth. But we all know that it's not really like that. If we just think this is something, we grab it, then we might refuse to really participate. You understand the essence of relationship, and to participate in real relationship, there are differences. But at the same time, if you really understand that, that should lead you to really participate. So what I'm trying to say is that we should be careful to treat these things. And they are also suffering for confusion, because if we refuse to understand reality through relationship, there are a lot of suffering that we just feel like, oh, what is the reality? What is the existence? We just cannot figure it out. Because if you refuse to understand it through relationship, through the giant web of relationship, you're just trying to find an entity or a substance, you will never be able to find it. And it's a suffering for people who want to understand the reality, want to understand what is existence, right? So this is suffering for ourselves. And of course, suffering for others is that if we have such a strong biases, if you are a scientist, you have strong biases towards the field of spirituality or philosophy. And if you are a philosopher, you have strong biases to other fields. So it creates a lot of division, a lot of biases, and isolation. If you just imagine the world itself is full of diversity. If you always lock yourself in one field, then you wouldn't be able to walk out from this field to verify if this understanding applies to everything, like universally. This is also important, because if it's truth, it cannot only apply in this little field of whatever you study there. It should apply to every field because it's universal. That is the definition of universal truth. So walk out this kind of isolated mind is also an important process that we have to been through to transcend those kind of isolated mind, and we can really get closer to understand, to have the realization of the reality. So you see, this understanding of oneness is not just about, well, explaining things in this way, this way, this way. Essentially, is also to reduce suffering. And emotion and rationality are not separated things. So please don't say that, okay, we are just discussing something completely rational here. Don't tell me about emotion. No, because what drives you to discovering this, to discuss this, is emotional. So please don't try to, separate these two as something not related. We should just detach from emotion when we're talking about rationality, and when we're talking about emotion, we detach from rationality. That's not fair and that's not realistic. That's why in this channel we always cover different field and different thing, and that's just my way of living. And honestly speaking, I think this is why I'm quite a positive person, because I felt like, oh, truth is something, it's a mystery, something so difficult to understand. First of all, I know that we all live already in the reality, which is the truth. We should participate in it to manifest beautifully. And second, I never think that is difficult to understand. What really we should drop is not something so far or so difficult. What we need to drop is just the ego. And it's not something that impossible to be done, isn't it? With life experience, with time, with education, with all sorts of wisdom, you can achieve that. I can achieve that. And there is a goal. It's not we drop ego for nothing, because the goal is that we will finally be free and no more suffering. Just imagine if you understand this truth, then is there any reason for you to not participate in life? Is there any reason for you to feel there is pointless or no meaning in life? Is there any reason for you to still think that the truth is so far away and so difficult to understand? No more. About this part, about consciousness and free will, we'll discuss a lot in the future. But so far, I just want us to build a solid foundation to understand the oneness. So now we already understand no matter is in philosophy or science, there is solid foundation with this oneness. It's not imaginary, it's not superstitious, it's not just emotional, it's not just about rationality. And as long as we understand it in a non-dual way, then this reality is always there. So that's it for this episode. Thank you, my friend, and I'll see you in the next episode.